how do you want to feel in your living room? That's actually my very first interview question. I have a whole interview I use that it starts with a deep dive right into how do you want to feel in this space before we get, and then we get into functional. How do you, how are you using the space? What are your needs? The functional pieces, right? That's kind of the next subset is what needs to happen in this space, right? It's our living room. Okay, so we have people over, we socialize. Oh, we need a game area because we like to play games or whatever, right? So what are your needs in the space? Then moving into, how thinking through how do you want people to flow through the space, because that really impacts where we place our furniture. Then getting into, I get into, preferences. What colors do you like? What colors do you dislike? So really knowing that about yourself.
Today we have Claudette Rowley, correct? Rowley?
It is Rowley.
Yeah. We have Claudette Rowley from Claudette Rowley Design. She is the creator of the Wired Method, a science-informed approach to interior design rooted in human behavior and in wellness. She specializes in designing residential and workplace environments that support your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Claudette, thank you so much for being here, and make yourself at home.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dee. I'm so happy to be here. I can tell already we're going to have a fun conversation. Yeah.
This has been a great experience. As most everybody knows, I do have a design background, and as a real estate agent, we actually design the spaces for homes that we list to try and get the most money for them. So we also want to help people understand that you have to live in your everyday life. And, your office at some point is, unless you're a neat freak, is probably going to be covered in paper because we're all human. But how do we make our homes support us? We're in such a busy world that we have things make noise all day long. How do we give ourselves a little bit of peace in the space that we're supposed to feel safest in? And so that's one of the things that I know that you work on the most. So how did you find the connection, or where is the connection between interior design and your health?
That's such a great question. So design is my fourth career. So I have one of those people, curse of the easily bored, right? So I've done a lot of different things, and so I started as a social worker. I ended up having a leadership coaching business for 20 years, did a lot of consulting work as well, and then moved into this a few years ago. And one of the things, all to say, that I found really interesting about design was when I started to, take classes in it and get certified in different things and, go to the Boston Design Center and all that good stuff, that there was this whole subset of design, to answer your question, that was focused on wellness. And it's something called neuroaesthetic design, biophilic design. And all those words really get into is it's bringing patterns of nature, right, into the design space. And I got really fascinated by this, right? Because I saw right away, because there's a lot of neuroscience behind this, and, I geek out over that. So there's a lot of neuroscience behind it. So it's all been proven, to be true. And what I realized was we could really help people with design. We could really actually enhance health, that we could, and there are a lot of people, talking about this in the design world and the architectural world as well, that we could actually enhance health, and I could bring this, into people's lives. So for me, it was like a two-layered approach. Like, yes, we'll create beautiful spaces, but I could also really be helping people. And, given that I was a social worker and a coach and a consultant and all this, I've always had this thread of helping people. Like, it's just kind of part of me, right? So whenever I can do that, that's just, it adds to it adds to the appeal to me. So that's how I ended up finding the connection, is that the connection was already out there. Other people had made it. And I just thought, wow, this is something to really start talking about. And when I mention to people, I'll say, well, I do this thing called neuroaesthetic design. And of course, people haven't heard of that. And I'm like, think about how you really want to feel in your space. Have you thought about that? And that's the connection point. Everyone says, I haven't thought about it, or not enough. And you're right. I actually do care how I feel in my space. Like, that actually matters to me. Yeah.
And that's, you're leading straight into, how does our environment influence how we feel every day?
It's interesting because it influences us far more than we're aware of, right? So, and that's because we, as we know, that's how the brain works, right? There's all these things going on behind the scenes that we're not consciously thinking about. So, a couple of concrete real world examples, right, that we can all relate to. So if you, think about going to the spa, get your nails done, massage, whatever, hair. So you go to the spa, right? And almost all of us who do that feel universally fairly relaxed in that space, right? And then if you think about how we feel going to a hospital, higher level of anxiety. Now it's true that's partly due to what's happening in those spaces, right? But as I tell people, if think about if your spa looked more like a hospital, would you be as relaxed? No, right? If your hospital room looked more like a spa, would you be slightly less anxious? Yeah, totally, right? So our spaces, are really impacting us, and even little things like color. Yeah. So when we see a color, we see the color, our eye registers it, goes through the retina, it hits the hypothalamic region of our brain. The reason that matters is that's near the pituitary gland. And then all of a sudden, either because if we like what we see, we have feel good hormones get released. If we don't like what we see, it stresses us out. Our stress hormones get released. So that's a really simple example of how our color in our environment actually impacts us, right? Is influencing us. Again, in ways like none of us, of course, are like, yeah, oh, the pituitary gland just, no, we're not aware of that, not thinking about it, right? Unless we're like, wow, I feel great right now, or I'm massively stressed, right? If we're at those extremes, we'll notice it. But yeah, so it's this, our environment really can impact and set the stage for us to feel so much better in our day-to-day lives.
Well, I mean, I know there's scientific proof that has been done on a lot of these things, especially, like I said, with all of the screens that we're looking at every single day. They say that we're supposed to take a break. I think it's every 15 minutes, and you're supposed to look at something green. So you're supposed to have something green next to your desk, because it makes your eyes relax. You've got something else to focus on. It actually brings your probably cortisol levels. But again, I read that article so long ago, but it's like, most people don't realize why color impacts their mood. And as homeowners, one of the things that we see is that usually you pick a color because you like it, or it matches the cabinets, or it matches, bedspread or towels, or that kind of thing. But most people don't realize that, that a color can actually bring down the value of your house. It's actually been proven that your house will sell for less if it's painted yellow.
Right.
Inside, not outside. Outside, not so much. Inside, yeah. So it's funny how that same theory, or the same scientific proof, it actually goes to how the color of your space can impact your mood.
Your mood, right? And the sale, right? Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting what you mentioned about the green and the screens, right? And that one of the reasons for that is because green is the easiest color for our eye to see. So, and that, think of, we have spent hardly any time as humans in the built environment, right? We were outside, right? We didn't have buildings, we didn't have houses, right, and trees. So we were always seeing green, right? So it has to do with also just how it registers in our eyes. So so in office spaces, manufacturing facilities, at home in your home office, exactly what you said, taking a break from the screen, looking at something green literally does rest your eye. And it can make a big difference in terms of our spaces, right? And it's color, every single color actually does evoke, and this has been interesting, universally evoke a certain emotion or feeling. Like blue, right? Blue is a favorite color of so many people because it's calm, it's spacious, right? It's comfortable. And so it can also be melancholy. Like you could have too much blue, right? It depends on how it's designed and styled. But it is true. That's one of the reasons people are gravitate toward blue. It's also the ocean. It's the sky. It's things that we deem pleasurable, right? And positive. We all like a blue sky most of the time. Most of us, are not against the ocean, right? We like seeing the ocean, right? So yeah, so it's really interesting. And I always think about the example in terms of color of my home office, interestingly, is painted red. That is my favorite color. I love it. So when I do podcasts and anything with video, I actually move to a different room in my house because most people it would be too intense, right? And so if, whenever we sell this house, I know I'll paint that room and have that room painted a different color because I know if someone's going to come in and see red walls and be like, oh God, now we have to paint, right? It's like a draining thing, right? So you have to, right, to your point about yellow, right? You want to be thinking, how does a buyer want to feel when they come in? Hope they want to feel like they can exhale, right? They want to feel comfortable. They want to feel like, okay, I can live here. And it's not going to be a lot of work before I can move in. Is that what you found too?
Yeah. Oh yeah, especially now. I mean, so I've been doing this for 18 years. And so in 2008, when the world was in upheaval, everybody was like, we don't care the condition that it's in because they were getting it at a discount. Oh, right. We'll fix it the way that we want. But it's funny, the group that are coming up now, and I've said this before to lots of other folks, we have boys in their 20s. So they're starting their lives. Yeah. And they grew up with our generation going, we can fix anything. We can put in new floors, we can paint, we can do it all, not a big deal. This generation that's coming up is like, I want to drop my stuff and go. I don't want to do anything. I'm not fixing anything. It needs to be perfect the day I move in. Mm-hmm. And so it's interesting to see that dynamic between we'll take it. It doesn't matter what condition it's in. We'll make it work. And no. You need to have it perfect. And just as you said, as soon as they walk in, they need to breathe. And that's what I tell people when you're looking at a home. As soon as you walk in, you'll know if you've come home or not. It's a feeling. As soon as you walk in. And you want it to be inviting, because if you walk in the door and you have a mound of laundry, I don't know about you, but that'll definitely give me anxiety.
Right. Yeah, I know. Right. Oh, I have to get that done too. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so that's why we focus so much on this. Mm-hmm. And so with what you do, you look at how our environment affects or influences us every single day. Mm-hmm. What are some of the changes, maybe wellness focused, that they can design changes that people can make that maybe will help with their wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some easy things, which is good news, right?
Yeah.
This isn't about, you have to, spend a bunch of money or, do a renovation or, although those things can be great too. So things like, bringing in plants, and, some people like plants, some people don't. One of the things that's really interesting is you can also bring in a representation of nature. So you could have a piece of artwork that represents a landscape. You can have fabric or a pattern on your rug or something like that is abstractly representative of something in nature, like a leaf pattern or something like that, or tree bark. It's interesting. So, because again, this is about how our brain registers it. So the brain registers those things as pleasurable. So it makes us feel relaxed. It's an interesting, there's a phrase, instead of beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it's beauty is in the brain of the beholder. Yeah, isn't that neat? Yeah, it's not mine, but I wish I could take credit for it, but I can't. But it's a really great, it's one of the reasons some of these tips and tricks and strategies work, right? Is because our brain responds universally to them. You can do that. The other thing that's really interesting is bringing in curved lines. So nature, there's a saying that there are no right angles in nature. So it's true. If you really look at every shape in nature, nothing's at a harsh right angle, right? Now, of course, we can't get rid of right angles in our built environment. That's, but could we bring in a round mirror? Can we bring in a piece of furniture with a curve? Could you have an oval table instead of a rectangular table, right? So simple things, just if you start looking for it and thinking about it, when you're making some choices, you can be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get that lamp that has sort of a real round base, right? Versus something more angular, right? So it's a simple little things like that. And what people will notice is like, yeah, that room feels a bit more relaxing to me now, right? Maybe because I brought in some curves, I brought in a plant, or I changed some artwork out. I thought about the color and I realized, this room is so neutral that it's understimulating me. I need a pop of color. So that's another easy thing, is color can be both understimulating and overstimulating. And that is partially due to just who you are, right, as a person. So I need, with red walls in my office, obviously, I need some high stimulation, right? Because I want to feel activated, motivated, energized in my workspace, right? So that's important to me. So I'm kind of an outlier there. But sometimes people will, we've had that trend in a lot of the country with a lot of grays and whites, right? And now we're moving into warmer colors again, warmer tones, natural woods. So the gray and white, the one downside of that trend is it was gray and white together are fairly understimulating. Right. So gray is the least stimulating color. And I'm sure there are many people who felt great in their gray and white environment. So, it's all about who you are and what you want. But for a lot of people, that might have been understimulating and they may not have realized it. But if you have a gray and white environment, and then let's say you bring in some color and some artwork, you bring in some throw pillows, with some pinks or some reds or some yellows or blues or whatever you like, that space now is transformed into being a bit more balanced and energized, right? And it's warmed up. It's not as cool. It's a lot of different things at that point. So those are some easy ways you can just think about some styling details that can make a difference in your space.
We saw that a lot. I mean, most people said, and it was a paint color that everybody knows, it's agreeable gray, which is a grayish color.
Yeah.
Didn't know that grayish ever existed, but it's a new word.
Yeah, it's a thing, right? Yeah.
Because it's literally between a gray and a brown. But most people are like, I'm so sick of this color because it's so boring. And
so boring.
We saw so many things come about with then you started mixing grays with bright yellows or grays with the teal blue, or we started seeing those kinds of things to try and bring that boring color to another level and at least give some life back into that sterilized environment.
I was going to say it's that balance I see especially in newer construction, right?
Oh yeah.
Where they want to build so that, people can come in and see themselves in the space. And how do you, to your point, how do you prevent it from being sterile?
Yeah.
Or boring, right?
Looking like a hospital.
Looking like a hospital. Exactly. Looking like a hospital. And that's the real challenge of a newer space, I think. Yeah.
So, what exactly, you've talked about neuroaesthetic design. What exactly is neuroaesthetic design and how can it help us?
Yeah. So neuroaesthetic design is a lot of what we've been talking about. It's really about understanding the science of how our brain reacts to beauty. And that could be art. It's not just interior design, right? That can be art. It can be music. It can be dance. It can be, being out in nature. It's all of, the architecture. And it's things like, if you think about some really famous buildings like Notre Dame or the Taj Mahal, it'd be hard to find somebody who didn't say those were beautiful, right? I mean, it's just kind of universal, and it has to do with the architecture and the patterns in the architecture, right? So neuroaesthetic design is really about understanding how beauty impacts the brains and patterns of beauty impact the brain, essentially. So, kind of in everyday language, right? How do we make sure that our environments, architectural environments, interior design, in exterior and interior environments, make us feel the way that we really want to feel? And that's what it boils down to.
What do you think are some common mistakes that people in general make when they're choosing a paint color for their room? Because like you said, your office is red, so you want to be stimulated in there to get work done. So what are some common mistakes that other people make when they're painting their home? I mean, as a real estate agent, like I've said, we now know that yellow can cost you money on your house.
Right.
But what about the body wise? What are some things that people are making mistakes on their color?
Yeah. So a common one is thinking that white goes with everything, right? Or that white is this neutral you can just put up, right? And the reality is white, first of all, if white is too bright, it'll feel clinical and sterile, right? And sometimes folks aren't aware of that till they're in it and it's been painted, right? And they're like, oh, geez, that doesn't, So that can be that. Another common mistake is thinking that it's almost underestimating the power of color. So I'll just grab a yellow because we've been talking about yellow, right? I'll just grab a yellow. I'll just grab a light blue. I'll just grab whatever. And it's sort of, it's not giving it the time and energy you need in order to make a choice that really works for you. And I don't mean it needs to take hours and months and anything like that, but just, how do I want to feel in this space? Making sure you get actual color samples and you look at them, morning, noon, and night as the natural light changes, right, in your home. and really understanding how the color should, paint color especially, right, should be a harmonizing force, meaning that you want to look at what are the hard, what color is my flooring, what are lighting, hard finishes, your kitchen counters, your hardware, your cabinets, anything that's not moving and not changing, right? If it's staying there, your furniture, right? And really, I'll tell people, make a list of those colors, like really identify those colors, and then you want to pick your paint color to harmonize that and pull everything together. The mistake I'll often see people make is, well, we decided, we wanted, I'm making something up here, but we love this sage green, so we painted our living room that color. So now we're going to go buy our furniture. It's like, okay, you actually want to do the reverse, because furniture costs a lot more than your paint color. Even if you hire a painter, it's still going to cost a lot more. So get your sofa first, right? Get your rug, get your big pieces of furniture. What color are they? And then pick your paint color to pull it together. So.
That's one that happens a lot. So like even my own mother did this. She wanted new furniture. So her husband had passed away. She wanted to redo her home. Mm-hmm. And so she was like, okay, I'm ready to get rid of it's time for me to get rid of the furniture and do something new. I said, okay, great. What kind of style do you want? Now, I didn't realize that was a hard question. And then I had to step back and think, most people wouldn't know how to answer that.
That's
true. For you and I both, because we love design, that one's a really easy one for us to go to. But I had to stop back and think, oh, no, my mom worked in computers. She's not going to know. So I started sending her some different things. And I sent her like West Indies and sent her, British colonial and sent her farmhouse chic. And she's like, no. But as soon as we got to that West Indies kind of, and for lack of a better word, rattan furniture, it kind of gave that beachy feel without it being beachy.
Right.
She stumbled across that and said, oh, I love that. I said, okay, great. Now we have a style. Now let's go and find furniture. And so we went and found furniture. And she didn't think beyond, because she has 2 dogs. And I don't know what the dirt is like up in Boston, but here we have what's called red clay, and it's orange and it gets on everything. Okay. And so she picked a white fabric couch with 2 dogs. And she's like, no, I needed to go back to leather, but that at least gave us a place to start, because once we started from the furniture, I could build her out pieces and add the accent colors of the corals and the navy and to brighten things up. So because most people are not going to know what style they like you said, they should pick furniture first, or should they choose something? What would be the number one thing? I want to redo my living room. What would be the number one question that somebody should ask to begin this neuroaesthetic journey?
How do you want to feel in your living room? That's actually my very first interview question. I have a whole interview I use that it starts with a deep dive right into how do you want to feel in this space. Before we get into functional, how do how are you using the space? What are your needs, the functional pieces, right? That's kind of the next subset is what needs to happen in this space, right? It's our living room. Okay, so we have people over, we socialize. Oh, we need a game area because we like to play games or whatever, right? So what are your needs in the space? But then moving into, how thinking through how do you want people to flow through the space, because that really impacts where we place our furniture. Then I get into, preferences. What colors do you like? What colors do you dislike? So really knowing that about yourself. Do you like patterns, right? Do you like texture? Some people are pattern averse, right? There'll be one pattern and that's it, right? That's it. There's one pattern. And I sometimes have to help people with that. Like, your space will look more interesting if we have a pattern, the energetic pieces of it. And then I love to go into what is going to spark delight in your space. What is going to spark joy? And that's not always as easy of a question to answer as you think, just like what your mother experienced with style, right? That she didn't know it till she saw it. And then when she saw it, she knew, this is what I love, right? This works for me. But yeah, really it's how do you want to feel in the space? Otherwise, yeah.
So one of the other things is, how can homeowners design their spaces to support their nervous system?
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking, if we're, number one, how do I want to feel in the space, right? using some of the tips we mentioned earlier around even, bringing in curves, right? Thinking about what colors understimulate you or overstimulate you, right? Can you bring in something that represents nature? I think not, this isn't really pragmatic, and it's really an important mindset, I find, is not settling for less than what you want, right? So many people will say, they'll hire me and be like, I just, I had to make a decision. It was super stressful. So I just picked this. And now I can't stand this sofa. Now we have it, just things like that where they're kicking themselves, and they were human and they were stressed. It totally makes sense. Right. But realizing now they should have, like, not should have, but they would have felt better with the decision if they picked something they really loved, is what I meant. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a key piece, is having the mindset of that you deserve to have what you really love.
Well, I think we've all been in a spot. Well, probably not everybody, but I remember growing up that, my first home, I had a lot of hand-me-down furniture. Stuff that my parents didn't want, stuff that his parents didn't want, stuff that friends didn't have or didn't want, those kind. So I had a mishmash of all of these things.
Yeah.
And I know that the first time that I bought a couch, and it was a couch I wanted and I got to pick out, it makes a huge difference that you go, take time. It's okay to deal with what you have, but really this is what I want. Now, that's within limits because we all have a budget. I found a Pottery Barn chair years ago. It was a cigar chair. I don't smoke cigars. But it was the most beautiful, but it was a chair. It was $2,500 for one chair.
Right.
And I was like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another place that makes this chair. And I did find another place that made it, but it was only like $600 less. It still was a $1,900 chair. I still do not own this chair because I do. Yeah. It is a beautiful chair, but I couldn't see myself spending $2,000 on a chair. So everybody's different, but getting what you want, even if it takes time, is worth it. You're totally worth it.
Yes, it is worth it.
So
it is worth it. Yeah.
How can design reduce stress in your everyday life? Because that sounds kind of far-fetched, to be honest, Claudette. How can design reduce stress in everyday life?
Yeah, so it can't, it's not going to reduce, it's not going to, how do I put it? It's not going to take away the external stressors you're dealing with, right? From work or whatever, a family, anything else we have going on. But, what it does is it can set a foundation for so if you have a space that doesn't stress you out, you've taken that off the stress list. Even better, if you have a space that makes you feel really good and you walk in and you're like, I love this room. You've added a boost. Again, it's that brain chemistry, right? You're like, oh, a dopamine hit, something like that. So it really gets into, and then even better if you feel like you can function well in this space because it relaxes you, or you love you're cooking. Oh, sorry, you love to cook and you have a great kitchen or whatever, right? So whatever your activities in that space, the space is aligned with that. Those are all ways. If you walk into we've all had this experience. You get home, you walk into your kitchen, your living room, and you're just irritated. I cannot believe how cluttered this is. I cannot believe I still haven't gotten to this living room. It drives me insane every day. And I know I need to spend time, because sometimes it's not even about money. Isn't super important. We are in budgets. And sometimes it's not even about money. People may have the money, but they don't have the time or the bandwidth, right, to create the space. So it can be that too sometimes. So yeah. So you've just added to your mental load, your emotional load, your nervous system load. If you're irritated every time you walk into your living room, think about walking into a living room that you really like when you get home. And then I just love this room. I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes before I, start dinner and deal with the kids, whatever I need to do. Right. And just relax here and, kind of take a deep breath. That's an example of how your space can really help decrease your stress. Yeah.
I think about, when you've had a bad day,
right?
And where's the first place you want to go? So, and that's where I think about, that I guess that neuroaesthetic design would be. It's like, I love my bedroom. So
Yeah.
when I'm done, and I've had a lot of surgeries over the last couple of years. And so it's like
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time there. So I
Mm-hmm.
created a room that when I want to run away and hide, that's where I go.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of space that we should have in our homes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes a difference. We just redesigned our primary bedroom, or I did. And after a renovation, and it really was intentional, to your point, around how I wanted the space to feel, really thinking that through, really, and what every time I walk into that room, even if it's, my husband's left some clutter or whatever, right? But every time, I still, when I walk into that room, I do feel myself just kind of exhale. I do feel myself, I look at the artwork. I love the wall next wall behind the bed of wallpaper, things like that. I just feel it's exactly what you said about your bedroom being a sanctuary. It sounds like, and you want to shut the door, shut off the world for a few minutes, relax, take a break, right? You can go into that sanctuary, right? And so I feel that way too about our primary bedroom. And I think that's part of it, right? So those spaces feel like sanctuaries, right? And then for other people, it could decrease their stress to have a really fun, not a fun bedroom, but a really fun room, like a rec room or a family room, right? Because for them, getting together with friends or their kids or whatever and having fun is a big de-stressor, right? So it all depends on, what you need and who you are. Yeah.
How should buyers and sellers think about design in today's market?
I think, and every market's different, of course. So that with that caveat in place, right? More depending where you are in the country, but it's, I think what you were saying earlier, that's, buyers are looking for something that they can really move into. And I think it gets back partly to the stress, right? That they don't want the stress unless they're the rare person that loves renovations. Most people don't want to go through a renovation, right? They don't want to deal with it, right? So it's getting, I think, when you're selling to the best of your ability and budget, getting your house to that level, right? Where people feel like they can walk in, exhale, and and even if it's not exactly the perfect decor for them, they feel that they can easily and comfortably move in, right? Kind of like, well, I would have liked another paint color, but this is fine for now. We'll repaint later. It's just kind of like this is okay. So I think that's a huge piece. And I think for buyers, really, really knowing what they want, right? And what they're, for this was it, this is coming to mind for some reason, so I'm going to mention it. My husband and I actually have been looking for another house just very casually for a few months in a particular area. And we went to this house that had been really beautifully renovated, like except for one thing. And this ended up being a deal breaker. So beautifully renovated. But one thing they had done is they had kept the original hardwood floors in the house. And it looked like the kitchen, I think this was house from that, I don't know. I want to say maybe it's 20 years old. The kitchen didn't have originally hardwood floor, and it looked like the bedrooms didn't either. They might have been carpeted. So instead of keeping carpet and instead of putting some other kind of flooring in the kitchen, they put in luxury vinyl plank next to the original hardwood. And it looked awful. Like it looked, because, the luxury vinyl plank was the wider, right? And then you had the narrow, 2 1/4 or 2 3/4, original oak hardwood floors. And so you're walking through, and I saw it in the kitchen. I'm like, well, it's not great, but all right. And then when we went upstairs, you had the hallway had the original flooring. Then each bedroom had this, and I just thought all I could think of is, if we make an offer on this, we're going to have to replace all that flooring. And I think to me, that was an example of a seller really not, I don't know what happened, but the dots didn't connect there. And it was really quite a mistake. So I think when you're selling, if you're making changes and renovating in order to sell, really looking at what is selling well in your area, what's going for top dollar, what's going quickly, what do those houses look like, right? And how much can you, and I would say, if you're like if your realtor has design expertise, great. But if that realtor doesn't, like, maybe you consult with a designer and just get some ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
So what design choices do you think create the biggest impact for people, whether it be in resale or, like you said, they just did this luxury vinyl plank and it didn't match.
It just didn't work. Right. Yeah.
So what kind of choices create a big impact in your mind for resale?
Yeah, I think that, a lot of the common things that people know to do, right? The decluttering, moving, personal items, personal photos, things like that. But I think creating a space that is symmetry in your space is a big deal. So furniture symmetry can make a big difference. Like I said, bringing in anything green, that's tasteful can make a difference. Really thinking through flow, right? Can people easily move through the house? Especially if it's vacant or it's staged, that wouldn't be an issue. But if the original furniture's in there, right? How can you move through the house? Does it appear visually cluttered? A lot of what people are sensing when I'm a potential buyer and I'm coming into a house is, does it feel like it flows? Does it feel like I can move through it? Does it visually feel organized? Right? It's an interesting thing. It's about how we see things visually. And that's where the symmetry can come in, because our brains like symmetry. Oh, we can relax. It's symmetrical, right? It's that thing about, I guess there's science that says symmetrical faces are viewed as more beautiful, right? And that's an unconscious thing, right? That's just how we register it. So those are a couple of things that really can make a difference. Again, and as we've talked about, assessing your color, right? Does it make sense to bring in a bit of color? Where do you want to decrease? Like you already said, if your walls are yellow, you might want to, paying for a painter is probably going to pay off in the end, right? Yeah, to make a difference there.
How can sellers make a home feel more emotionally inviting to people?
I think you can do that at a few different sensory levels. I know real estate agents, at least around here, often will do this, the fresh baked cookies, the sensory piece, the candle, right? We do that because it's homey. Doesn't make sense to have a little bit of light music on in the background, right? Something that's peaceful, nature-based. It's not intrusive, of course, right? But something kind of everybody would like. So thinking about that at a sensory level, I think that, making sure that the space doesn't look stark or harsh in any way, right? So that's one reason stagers use a lot of throw pillows often, right? Is because they work, right? Right. They totally work. It makes us feel more comfortable. It's an easy way to bring in some color. Thinking about, texture differences too. Again, that's that sensory, unconscious sensory recognition. So can you bring in different forms of texture? Fabrics are a great way to do that. Anything from the materials from the natural world. And sometimes we inherently have that. Like if you have, tile on your floor or your hardwood floors, anything like that, any materials that occur in the natural world will gravitate toward and feel are inviting. Which doesn't mean if you have a quartz countertop, that's a bad thing. I don't mean that at all. I have a quartz countertop, right? But just as much as we can, as it makes sense.
Well, I think about so again, because of the background that you have, I think about design when we're looking at staging some of our listings. And so like one of the big things you're starting to see more and more of are like the moss balls that go inside of a centerpiece, or the artichoke, the fake artichokes. That green, that texture. Because again, artichokes have a specific texture and feel to them. Yeah. If you think about the moss green balls, that again, texture, color, the natural wood that we're seeing in bowls coming through now, a lot of that is starting to translate. So whether people know it or not, they're doing the neuroaesthetic things, on the, like I said, unconsciously. That's what it is. That's what word I was looking for, that people don't even realize.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's a big part of that warming up trend, right? Is the greens and the natural woods. Everything you just described is like so on trend right now. People are doing it without realizing it. And the other thing that's important too is lighting, because we haven't really talked about lighting. Is really making sure that you have a variety of lighting, even if you have overhead lighting, and this is functional anyway. We always want to have lighting for our tasks, but I think especially if you're getting your home ready to sell, making sure you have enough lamps, right? Is it cozy? Because lamps create coziness. That's another way to make it emotionally inviting. Is it, so lighting can make a big difference. The other thing too we're seeing is, and this comes right out of neuroaesthetic design and biophilic, which is just nature-based design, is this idea of creating nooks. it's called Refuge technically, but anyway, but it's like a reading nook, right? You see these places for it's about being, kind of cozy, having a place to, like, your bedroom's a perfect example, right? Refuge. When I want refuge, right? This is where I'm going. When I want to be safe and I want to have a break, and connect with myself, right? I'm refuge. So it could be like, a reading nook. It could be a window seat. It could be, if you can create like a cozy corner at one end of your living room, right? It could be, what am I thinking of? Like a breakfast nook. That's what I was envisioning. A breakfast nook, anything like that. That's also on trend and also makes people feel emotionally safe.
Oh yeah. I mean, You talked about lighting. The very first thing that we do when we walk into a house, we usually end up bringing about 24 light bulbs every single listing, because how many times have you been in a home and you're looking at the primary bathroom or a bathroom, doesn't matter, and they have a 3 light bulb fixture and one light bulb is a different color?
Oh, right. Exactly.
And your eye goes directly to that. And I don't know if it's just me, but it's one of the very first things I see. Or you see a chandelier that has 7 or 5 different light bulbs in it, and 3 of them are different colors.
Absolutely. It makes a huge difference.
Because the light bulb burns out, you grab one, you put it back in, and then you're like, okay, I've got cool white and warm white or daylight in the same light fixture, and it's throwing off all kinds of different colors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes a huge difference. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say, and even the idea of thinking about the coolness and the warmth of your light bulb, right? So if your light bulb's more of a bright white cool, it's actually really hard to relax in that color. So, again, we might want warmer bulbs for selling, right? We want the cozy, maybe not in the bathroom, but we want that coziness, right? But those details matter. Yeah. People look at that and they'll look at that and think, oh, let's your light bulb example. Think, I wonder what else in the house isn't quite how it should be, or some version thereof, right? What else isn't quite? Yeah. And that's also why those little details, right? As you know, of course, this is your field, but these details matter so much.
Well, all right. So how many times has a light bulb burned out? You've taken it out, and then, like the rest of us, you go to do something else and you forgot what you were doing, and the light bulb has been missing for how many weeks now?
Exactly. Right.
And then somebody comes in and goes, oh, there's something wrong with the light fixture. There's got to be something. Why would you not put a light bulb back in it? Except for the fact that you're forgetful and
you're forgetful and busy, and if you're like me, you keep walking past it thinking, I need to put that light bulb in, and then I never think about it again until the next time I walk past it. Right?
Yeah, and so and that what causes buyers when they're walking through your home to go, there's something wrong with the light fixture, because why wouldn't you put a light bulb in?
Right.
Exactly. I hear one of the great things you have this free resource called the Color Code, that is a paint color quiz that takes the guesswork out of selecting the best paint color for your space.
Yes, I do. Yeah, the Color Code quiz. So that's on my website, which is ClaudetteRowleyDesign.com. You can take it. It's a free resource. It asks you 10 or 12 questions about like how you're going to use your space, what's your style, all that good stuff. And then it will give you some suggested paint colors. Yeah. And some design tips as well.
So we are offering that to all of our subscribers, and going to give them the link to your website so they can do your color code quiz and be able to have the best color space. Claudette, thank you so much for coming on today. It meant the world. I so greatly appreciate your time, and I thank you so much for your knowledge.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me on Make Yourself at Home. I hope you found insights and inspiration to help you navigate your real estate journey with confidence. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this show with your friends, because everyone deserves to feel at home. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep making moves that matter.